Hello, all you freedom-loving people. Welcome to another episode of Front Page International. I'm your host, Scott Cameron Goulet. Kari Lake finally has her day in court to argue that election workers encountered signature verification issues on thousands of ballots that were cast in Arizona's midterm elections. The claims made in a study about the origins of COVID-19 may also be unverified, according to a newer study that was leaked from the Pentagon. This newer study overturns the claims that were made in the original study that Fauci relied on, and it turns out that Fauci was actually behind that original study. The G7 are discussing ways to deal with Russia and China. More sanctions against Russia may be coming. However, an agreement on how to deal with China without risking financial ties may be a bit more tricky. Turkey is headed into a runoff election after President Erdogan failed to get 50% of the votes. His challenger points to alleged irregularities in the first round of the election and Erdogan's desire to return Turkey back to the ways during the Ottoman Empire. An Iranian diplomat has been appointed to chair the UN Human Rights Council Social Forum. This is like a slap in the face to all the women being oppressed, the girls being poisoned in schools, and all of the protesters who have been arrested and given death penalties. Okay, let's get into it. A 3-day trial started on Wednesday for Republican candidate Kari Lake to prove that Maricopa County did not properly verify voter signatures on ballot envelopes during the 2022 midterm elections. Yesterday, on the first day of the trial, Kari Lake's attorney, Kurt Olson, presented a clip questioning Maricopa's log file data.
As our expert will testify, this isn't a question of not getting it right. It's simply they are not physically capable of reviewing the signature, both from the standpoint of being able to do an assessment with respect to the procedures, but also with respect to the functionality of the computer. When the images, you have to scroll down to check the record signature. You don't see the scrolling down function. What that log data shows, Your Honor, is that over 274,000 ballots were approved at less than 3 seconds each. That includes one signature verifier who approved 100% of the 26,900 signatures that he verified at less than 3 seconds a signature. Maricopa's log file data shows that 11 of these signature verification workers approved 170,000 signatures at a rate of less than between 0 and 2.99 seconds with a 99.97% approval rating. That's not signature review, Your Honor. Simply flashing a signature on the screen, clicking a button, and moving on is not signature review. As I said, the evidence will show that Maricopa knew exactly what was going on. They could monitor each of their workers and, in fact, told them that they were being monitored.
Two Arizona courts previously rejected Kari Lake's argument that Election Day problems cost her the election. However, Arizona's Supreme Court earlier this week allowed a 3-day trial to proceed on her claims that are centered around alleged signature verification issues in Maricopa County. Days earlier, Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Peter Thompson ruled that Kari Lake's team must prove her allegations with clear and convincing evidence. Many workers on lower-level signature verification who filed court declarations in support of Kari Lake experienced rejections due to mismatched signatures on 15% to 40% of the ballots that they encountered. However, attorneys for Arizona election officials said that the workers' speculation about signature verification efforts does not amount to a violation of the law or misconduct by election workers. Kari Lake's lawyers say that there was a flood of mail-in ballots in Maricopa County at a time when there were too few workers to verify ballot signatures. So we'll be watching and waiting over the next 2 days to find out the results. Defense Department researchers wrote a devastating takedown, slamming the Fauci-led natural origin study, the proximal origin study. The proximal origin study is what Dr. Anthony Fauci used as proof that the COVID-19 virus came from nature. The researchers' takedown that just came to light on May 15th was written back in May 26 of 2020. The paper was leaked to the public by the virus origins research group called Decentralized Radical Autonomous Search Team Investigating COVID-19. The working paper scientifically undermined the natural origin case that was made in the proximal origin study. The newly revealed paper concluded the arguments that Anderson et al. Used to support a natural origin scenario for SARS-CoV-2 are based not on scientific analysis, but on unwarranted assumptions. So why is the existence of this internal Pentagon paper so crucial? This is because it proves that government officials were well aware in the early months of the pandemic that there was no evidence of a natural origin for the COVID-19 virus. Moreover, Pentagon officials would have known that Fauci had tried to create a false narrative regarding the origins of COVID-19. Fauci initially proposed the proximal origin study during a secret teleconference on February 1st, 2020. The teleconference was intended to deflect attention from a possible lab origin of COVID-19 and to shift the focus to a natural origin theory. Fauci led a number of scientists, including Christian Anderson of Scripps Research and Robert Gary of Tulane Medical School, to disprove the theory of a lab leak with a study. Although Fauci was directly involved in the paper's inception and with shaping its arguments, his role was kept secret from the public. Fauci later awarded Anderson and Gary with generous taxpayer-funded grants. Later on, reviewers at the Nature publication, which is a science journal, immediately noticed the proximal origin errors. This fact became known late last year from emails that were obtained via the Freedom of Information Act by independent journalist Jim Tobias. However, with the help of Jeremy Farrar, who is now the World Health Organization's chief scientist and who helped Fauci shape the natural origin narrative, proximal origin was accepted for publication in Nature Medicine on March 17, 2020. The study firmly concluded that no laboratory-based scenario is plausible. However, 1 month later, on April 17, 2020, President Trump confirmed that the COVID-19 pandemic likely started in a Wuhan lab in China. On the same day, Fauci attended a White House press conference. And Fauci ultimately denied the possibility of a lab origin of COVID-19, and he cited the proximal origin study as evidence. However, Fauci told reporters that he could not recall the authors' names. But it wasn't known at the time that Fauci knew the authors well, and he personally led the effort to write proximal origin. As a result, proximal origin quickly became the media's go-to natural origin authority. The media repeated Fauci's claim that the paper proved COVID-19 came out of nature. Proximal origin also became the most read COVID-19 article and one of the most cited academic papers ever. Yet, while Fauci and the media told the public that proximal origin had settled the origin debate, Pentagon researchers reached a very different conclusion in their takedown. Commander Jean-Pierre Chrétien, a Navy doctor who is working at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, along with Dr. Robert Cutlip, a research scientist at the Defense Intelligence Agency, wrote the takedown. They discovered that COVID-19's features were actually developed differently. They found that COVID-19's features were consistent with another scenario that SARS-CoV-2 was developed in a laboratory by methods that leading coronavirus researchers commonly use to investigate how the viruses infect cells and cause disease, how they assess the potential for animal coronaviruses to jump to humans, and how they develop drugs and vaccines. Also, the most notable part of the paper by Chrétien and Cutlip is that the authors note the collaboration between Ralph Barrick of the University of North Carolina, who is a pioneer of gain-of-function experiments, and Shai-Jing Li, who is the director of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. As Chrétien and Cutlip observed, Berwick and Shai conducted an experiment in 2015 that mirrored how the COVID-19 virus would have been engineered in a laboratory. The direct link between the Wuhan Institute of Virology and the know-how that is needed to make COVID-19 was not mentioned in proximal origin. While Kretchen and Cutlip did not provide a definitive answer to COVID-19 origins, they concluded that none of the arguments in proximal origin undermine the likelihood of a laboratory origin. So since proximal origin was taken down so comprehensively, why was the Pentagon's paper not made public? Instead, the Pentagon, led by Mark Esper at the time, allowed Fauci's false origin narrative to fester. One of its authors, Cutlip, left the Department of Defense in 2021, and whether Cutlip shared his insights with President Trump or Joe Biden is unknown. Nevertheless, the true picture is becoming clearer. The heads of the world's advanced countries will meet for 3 days at the Group of Seven, the G7 summit this week. While the summit will start on Friday in Japan, officials believe that the most significant points of the gathering will be China and Russia, which weren't even invited to the summit. This is because the officials aim to project unity against the challenges from Beijing and Moscow. The divisions within the G7 seem to be most notable over China. Countries are struggling with how to warn against China's threat to global supply chains and to economic stability without completely losing an important trade partner. All of the G7 countries, the United States, Japan, Germany, the United Kingdom, France, Canada, and Italy, are closely tied economically to China. But their differences regarding China were sharply highlighted after French President Emmanuel Macron visited Beijing last month. Macron called on the European Union to reduce its dependence on the United States. Some G7 members, including Japan, are skeptical about China's investment controls. The United States is leading the way on pushing for more robust investment controls. However, Germany is more cautious because of its heavy reliance on Beijing for trade. The leaders also plan to tighten sanctions on Russia. The proposed moves will target sanctions involving third countries. They would seek to undermine Russia's future energy production and to curb trade that supports Russia's military. However, regarding Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there are differences in strategy and differences in how the conflict will be resolved. Officials have said that the United States doesn't want to discuss a diplomatic path forward until the spring military offensive plays out. But Europe wants a diplomatic solution in hand. Japan also wants to send a clear message about the importance of rule-based order, since Tokyo fears that Russian actions against Ukraine may provoke Chinese action against Taiwan. On Wednesday, Turkey's main opposition party, the Republican People's Party, filed complaints about thousands of alleged irregularities at ballot boxes in Sunday's election. The alleged irregularities occurred when President Erdogan dramatically outperformed his poll numbers and came within half a point of winning an immediate victory over his challenger, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. However, the Republican People's Party officials admitted their challenges were highly unlikely to overturn the election's first round of voting. The election will now be settled in a runoff election between Erdogan and Kılıçdaroğlu on May 28th. Some irregularities amounted to a single miscounted vote, while others affected hundreds of ballots. The Republican People's Party complained about a total of 2,269 ballot boxes nationwide in the presidential election and about 4,825 ballot boxes in the concurrent parliamentary races. Although this is a sizable number, it's not enough to change the outcome of the election, even if all the Republican People's challenges were validated. On Monday, international observers from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe criticized the Erdogan government for failing to handle the ballots sufficiently and transparently and for blocking 2 observers from the organization. However, the organization also said that its complaints would likely not change the race's outcome. The critics of the election's validity were particularly suspicious of Erdogan's high popularity in most of the provinces that were severely affected by the massive earthquake in February. Poor earthquake response and shocking levels of corruption in the construction industry during Erdogan's 20 years in power were major political liabilities for the president. However, Erdogan and his party reportedly won 10 of the 11 provinces that were hit by the quake. Erdogan only lost in Hatay. Hatay is the province that was hit hardest by the quakes. Some said that the region voted for Erdogan because its religious Muslim population responded to the Islamic elements of Erdogan's campaign. As for the religious angle, Kılıçdaroğlu is a secularist who advocates returning to modern Turkey's founding father principles. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk laid down those principles. Atatürk also founded the Republican People's Party. These are the principles that Erdogan has aggressively overturned as he promotes a vision of returning to the Ottoman Empire. Kılıçdaroğlu himself is in a Alevi, which is a minority Islamic group that few prominent Turkish politicians admit belonging to. Kılıçdaroğlu's open declaration of faith was applauded by many for breaking a taboo in Turkey and for promoting religious diversity. However, it apparently offended Erdogan's traditional Muslims. Erdogan's allies portrayed Kılıçdaroğlu as one who wanted to start a religious war in Turkey by tearing down Erdogan's Islamist institutions and by exposing his religious identity. Erdogan's allies also linked him to pro-Kurdish parties and the Kurdish separatist of the PKK. This approach appears to have worked for Erdogan in order to blunt the political damage from the earthquakes. Meanwhile, Kılıçdaroğlu's campaign took a surprising, no more Mr. Nice Guys turn heading into the runoff. On Wednesday, he accused Erdogan of planning to flood Turkey with millions of irregular migrants, and he challenged Erdogan's supporters to vote for him instead. Kılıçdaroğlu warned that the number of irregular migrants could soar to 30 million if Erdogan is reelected. An Iranian diplomat has been appointed to chair the UN Human Rights Council Social Forum in November of 2023. The president of the UN Human Rights Council, Vaclav Balak, announced the appointment of the Iranian foreign policy expert in a letter that was dated May 10, 2023. Ali Bahraini, who is the ambassador and permanent representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the United Nations, was chosen from among several regional candidates. The United Nations has been accused of rewarding Iran after major human rights abuses in Iran, such as its mass crackdown on protesters. Now the UN hands the regime a leading role at the Human Rights Forum. Israeli officials and Iran human rights groups have poured scorn on the UN. This has sparked much anger and indignation. Naftali Bennett, who was Israel's former prime minister, said, "This is like granting bin Laden a Nobel Peace Prize. The regime of the Islamic Republic of Iran has been at the forefront of some of the worst human rights violations in the past 20 years, murdering women, violently repressing peaceful demonstrations. Iran, time and time again, proves to be one of the worst regimes on earth." The move came shortly after Iran hanged 2 men on blasphemy charges, and after Iran continued its crackdown on anti-regime protesters. The protesters, in some cases, have been put to death after trials that lasted as little as 15 minutes. Reza Pahlavi, the exiled crown prince of Iran, in an interview on May 14th with Fox News said, "I don't know if I should laugh or cry, but it's tragic. It's actually a slap in the face, adding insult to injury to a nation that every single day, when you hear about women being shot in the face or being gassed and poisoned in schools, and that cannot be without direct knowledge and or involvement of the regime." He added, "And you reward this as an international body by giving them one of the highest system chairs when it comes to human rights. It's just beyond a joke. It's outrageous." UN Watch launched a petition to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Wednesday. The petition is to stop the Islamic Republic from chairing the forum. There's still 6 months left to cancel the appointment. The petition has so far been signed by more than 60,000 people. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard today, please don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth. Again, thank you for watching Front Page, and we will see you next time.